Disco Boy by Giacomo Abbruzzese, who's an Italian filmmaker. This is his debut film. He's made his debut feature, I should say, dramatic feature. So he's made shorts, maybe as many as 8 or so shorts and documentaries. I've seen one of those, which is Fame, which I really immensely dislike. Sort of graffiti doc, basically, or street art doc, whatever you want to call it. I like to think of it as defacing public monuments. But this Disco Boy basically is a sort of Pilgrim's Progress style film. It's a journey of a man to join the Foreign Legion. His kind of hazing and training within the environment of the Foreign Legion. Obviously, Claire Denis, Beau Travail, a klaxon there. And Beau Geste as well, obviously, like the Foreign Legion film, and then a journey into Nigeria and a military confrontation, and then this kind of the aftermath of this. Again, like Wachowski is the best thing about this film in a lot of ways, because he plays a largely silent, very physically intense man driven by we don't know his motivations why he's joining the but
he starts off as a sort of he's just visiting Poland with a bunch of other Belarusians,
but that's a ruse. It's a Belarus,
and then it's a Belarus. It's a great Belarus, and then of course he slips off with a friend who tragically dies on the way, and he makes it to France, and of course he has nothing, so the only way to stay in France is to join the French Foreign Legion. Yeah,
and to gain the green card or whatever you get as a result. So, this film, obviously, Beau Travail is in the water with it. It competently pays homage to Claire Denis' work in a sense of the training sequences. I think in some of the military encounters in it are.
It's a Pinterest board of a film, really.
Yeah,
it's a Miro board. It's a Trello board. It's all the boards.
Yeah, because it's got this kind of unusual.
And we were during it. No, we weren't. Actually. It was quite entertaining.
I didn't love it at all. I thought it was okay. Certain parts it really irritated me. The final act I found really distasteful. God-awful slop of an act, because what happens is he goes to Nigeria and Abbruzzese spends a long time setting up this kind of rebel group that they're going to engage with on Niger Delta. We're introduced to these characters and this village life, and you think, okay, so the film's now just going to be set in Nigeria, and we're going to have this kind of high-end war film. You get a bit that bit's actually over really quickly, and they dispatch with it. He kills some guy who's this rebel chief,
who has one eye a different color from the other.
Yeah, and then whose dream actually is to go to Europe to dance in a nightclub, basically.
He's known as Disco Boy.
Disco Boy. So
I guess Wachowski's character sort of takes his place in a way and tries to seduce his sister.
It gets really messy. So he kills this guy.
She's an asylum. She's an asylum seeker who then moves to Paris and becomes a kind of
dancer in a club that he frequents, and they have this kind of this really shite kind of ransacking of the final dance scene in Beau Travail, like one of the most beautiful dance scenes in film history. Really powerfully taught explosion of sublimated sexual and willful energy at the end of Beau Travail. And what you get here is this consistent, it keeps happening, this kind of dance.
The problem is that when something is good in a very distinctive way, it gets on everyone's radar in a sort of then everyone then it becomes a formula. When Claire Denis did that, it felt very specific, and it was weirdly just like you ended up thinking about the music, the rhythm of the night, this Corona track. Levant, obviously, across his career, he has been like a physical performer in lots of ways.
Much like Wachowski.
Yeah. There's similarities. Sort of, I would file them in the same category. Wachowski, Kinski, Klaus Kinski, Fassbinder himself, and Levant, these kind of diminutive clown-like animal presences. He's a great performer. He's basically the best thing about it. The other best thing about it is this thermal cam battle sequence in the water, which is like extremely tense and very entertaining. There's a sort of platoon tribute helicopter liftoff war thing. There's a Vice News bit that's a bit corny. It's a very inconsistent film that's basically an amalgamation of lots of different, as I say, reference points on a mood board.
Yeah, because you've got your Richard Moss visuals, even with the kind of night vision cam. Obviously, Richard Moss is a photographer, but it's literally sucking the juice out of Richard Moss. And I think but those combat scenes are amazing. They're disorienting. He actually uses the night vision in a much more imaginative way than Richard Moss, who I think is a very middling photographer. Which is because we're very up close to these tussling bodies. The kind of infrared or the kind of red and blue kind of flares out, so you get this kind of texture flicker effect, much like a kind of Brackagian digital brackage, basically.
Yeah, totally. It feels like it's a moment where you're like, and I don't need this in every film I see, but I love it when I do see it. There's a bit where you're like, this is a new image. This is a new kind of. This is a thing like a very cinematic button being pushed in it with a texture and a visual and an energy.
We've not seen that before in an independent film of this scale. We've seen plenty of it in Stom Sogo, for example.
But we haven't seen a battle. We haven't seen a battle scene done. Like, we haven't seen a battle scene that you're desperately following to try and find out what happens, presented in a way that goes into abstraction, not in some like corny sort of Saving Private Ryan like high shutter speed thing, but like in a genuinely like in a way that conveys the fog of war, that conveys the sort of sensory confusion while also using a device. I thought it was like so inspired, and I was I was so let down by how I mean, it's often the case that we watch things and there's something sort of stylistically a bit interesting that isn't like, even like the after sun, the camcorder doesn't last long enough or whatever, but like in this case it was just so well deployed, and then the rest of the film fell far below it.
It felt like it was a victim of maybe a constrained budget, and that sustained. So the actual film was shot in Portugal. I suppose there was limited landscape in Portugal that would reflect the Niger Delta, so maybe they felt like
it was pretty impressive. They made it feel like Africa.
There's a lot of CGI, which is fine. I mean, it was kind of tastefully done. But yeah, I was anticipating this kind of Apocalypse Now journey into the Heart of Darkness vibe, with the end of the film. And instead, we get this kind of story about redemption and
and
PTSD
it's sort of
and
cheap, unearned colonial sort of question mark on all this stuff, isn't there?
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it was. It was. It's interesting that he interviewed JR in in Fame, his documentary about street art.
Oh, it's about the guy that the guy was abusing,
Agnes Varda,
dragging her around.
And I think there's a kind of JR-ness about it. There's kind of cringeness to it. So on the base cringe continuum, it really pumps. It's quite cringe, quite churgy ambience towards the end. I think. But Rutowski, but he still kind of simmers with this kind of blunt physicality, and it's amazing how him going to this nightclub, refusing to dance with this woman, so he just sits at the bar and goes Bordeaux.
Yeah,
he wants to drink Bordeaux.
The actor's really having a great Berlinale, I have to say. I didn't think I'd come back from.
Glugs it down.
I didn't think I'd go to Berlinale and say that the most impressive people were Americans and actors, but that's where it's at.
A filmmaker's paradise at the moment.
What is there anything else to say about? I don't know if it'll do well, but it doesn't really deserve to. But it's also watchable in a certain sense.